Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Lap Baby by Amy Q. Barker. And this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue. Once you hear my story, you'll never fly on a plane again without thinking about me. You might even try to catch a quick glance. At first, you'll think, how cute, how cuddly, how soft and warm, cooing in my mother's arms. And then in the next instant, you'll remember and you'll think, oh my heavens. I must say up front, I'm sorry. Now you'll have to change your routine. Sure, I know how it is. Normally you amble down the aisle, keeping your bag and purse out of the way of the armrests and pointy, intrusive elbows. Then you figure out the numbering system. Is 12D the window, aisle, or middle seat? Then you hope the overhead bin isn't full so you can keep your bag and coat right above your seat. It'll be so much easier to reach when it's time to deplane. The quicker you're off the plane, the more likely you'll be first in line at the car rental agency, and you know how long that process takes. One person ahead of you adds 20 minutes to your timeline, and that's 20 minutes taken away from your get-together with friends, or your hug from grandma, or your makeup sex with your husband, or the baseball game at the new stadium with your dad, or the free food and booze reception the night before your work conference. Anyway, so you're thinking about a lot of things while you're walking down the aisle of the plane. And of course, you're also thinking, who will I be seated next to? A talker, a drinker, a smelly guy, a person who takes up more than their fair share of the space, a messy eater, a loud laptop listener, or worst case scenario, an ugly, arrogant guy with bad breath trying to pick you up. I get it. I know all the worries, all the concerns, and that's just if you're on the plane by yourself. Add a spouse, friend, parent, or child, and your worries multiply exponentially. Did I remember to pack everything? Did we leave anything at home or in the terminal? How will I keep everyone occupied? Did I pack enough snacks? What if we have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the flight? My point is this. When you board a plane, usually you have a lot on your mind, least of all me. But from this point forward, I'm really sorry. You're going to think of me, and look for me, and wonder about me, and come up with a plan in your mind for me. I'm not talking about the repetitious demonstrations that we're all subjected to by the flight attendant where they hold up the oxygen mask and the inflatable life jacket. Although, come to think of it, those may come in handy. You never know. You should probably pay attention and listen. I'm talking about a real plan, where in your brave mind's eye, you come for me. You try to save me, and maybe you do, and maybe you don't. But no matter what, you think of me. Chapter 1. Julie Geiger woke up to the same recurring nightmare, her body tangled in the sheets, sweat covering her forehead. The nightmare that had become like a familiar heavy stone wrapped around her neck these past 20 years. She was used to the feeling of fire and heat, the panic, the reaching for calm amid the chaos, the this is what you trained for, so get it together self-talk, the burden of instruction, the need for steady nerves despite the gaping wound and smell of toxic smoke, plastic, metal, and burning flesh. But she wasn't used to this new feeling of anger and injustice. She'd always turned that inward, made herself sick with it, drank it down with a glass of wine, shot of whiskey, or tumbler of gin. This new feeling was outward facing, a throwing off of the pain, like the first pitch of a baseball game. Release it, watch it, fly, see if it connects. Then you'll know what it means. Then you'll know whether it's a strike or a ball or a foul or a home run. Right now, though, it simply felt like a sucker punch to the gut, and she was fighting mad, wanting to lash out and give a slug in return. A left hook to the side of the head of unfairness, nonsensical inertia, ineptitude, lack of progress, the unthinking bureaucrats in their ivory towers, and the way things were and would always be. She sat up in bed, wiped her sweaty brow with the back of her hand, and checked her phone. 3:12. What day was it? Her foggy brain registered. Tuesday. She was due at the airport at 4:30, so she may as well get up. Her compact suitcase was neatly packed on the upholstered bench at the end of her bed. She quickly showered and did her hair and makeup. It was June and expected to be a scorcher, so definitely a chignon kind of day. She wasn't in the mood to mess with the straightener or curling iron, and she wanted more than anything to feel cool and composed. Over the years, she had perfected the intricate yet refined, strategically placed bun at the nape of her neck for the best airflow, containment, and attraction. When she finished, she used her handheld mirror to ensure that every errant strand was neatly tucked, every bobby pin proficiently hidden. After packing her remaining toiletry items, she zipped her wheeled bag, sipping on a travel mug of hot coffee as she glided out at the door of her contemporary chic lakefront view apartment on her way to the airport. Half an hour later, she was in the crew lounge at her home base, Chicago O'Hare, eating a banana and talking to Cheryl, who was about to head to her gate for a flight to Miami. Julie asked, "When are you back?" Cheryl grinned and said, "Not for 5 days. I'm meeting Tony. We're headed to the Bahamas, not Nassau. Nice little getaway." "Oh my," Julie said with a whimsical smile and sighed. "I'm so jealous. I haven't done anything fun in ages." "Well, you should. You work too hard." Julie shrugged, not denying it. "Saving up, not for sure for what. Well, drink a pina colada for me, or 5. "I will, believe me. I'll text you when I'm back. We can do dinner, okay?" "Sure, sounds good," Julie said with a cheery wave. Julie rolled her bag into the bathroom, taking out her toothpaste, toothbrush, and lipstick. As she brushed, she thought about Cheryl. She was at least 10 years younger than Julie and somehow never seemed beaten down by the job or by life in general. Always sweet and happy and outgoing. They had met for dinner several times in Chicago and once in Denver when they were stranded during a blizzard. That was when she told Julie about her on-again, off-again relationship with Tony, a handsome pharmaceutical sales rep from Miami. She said she wasn't ready to settle down and that Tony was the perfect fling, always available at a moment's notice. Julie was a little envious. She'd been divorced for years, and even though she dated on occasion, she hadn't had anyone steady or meaningful for so long that she couldn't remember what it felt like. She was independent to a fault. The fault being that her independence often led to loneliness. Maybe that's why she worked so much. Keeping busy always seemed like the solution, but now that she was older, she wondered if work and busyness were truly enough to stave off those needling pangs, those nights alone, those quiet meals by herself. Julie finished applying her lipstick and making sure her uniform was neat before heading to her gate, thinking, sure, spontaneity and excitement weren't her strong suits, but what she lacked in social skills, she made up for in strict organization, precision, punctuality, attention to detail, consistency, and ability to ensure that things went according to plan. That was her forte, and she was proud of her ability to assess and handle any complicated situation and parse it into manageable chunks that could be analyzed, simplified, and conquered. It was why she became a flight attendant. Julie grew up in the Chicago suburb of Evanston, and while her sisters preferred to play sports outside, Julie stayed inside and sorted her Barbie's clothes by color and style, displaying each in their proper Barbie dream home, bus, or, of course, airplane. Later in high school, she applied these same organizing skills to her schoolwork, excelling in every class and eventually becoming valedictorian and the lead actress in the senior play. The teachers loved her, and the students were either in awe of her, envied her, or wanted to be her, or at least be best friends with her. She went on to earn a bachelor's degree in hotel management, working after graduation as an assistant manager for a small Chicago hotel for 2 years, until she had enough experience to apply for and get her dream job as a flight attendant for United Airlines. Sure, she had her wild partying days back in her 20s. She'd even been married to a bartender for a while. But so much had happened since then in her life, in her career. She still maintained a tight control on everything, everyone, and every situation in her world because that was what made her feel calm, complete, and whole. Control, perfection, neat and tidy, meticulous, ordered readiness. But sometimes, when she allowed herself to daydream, she wondered what it would be like to be more like Cheryl. Carefree, go with the flow, loosey-goosey, up for anything. However, these qualities were like strange aberrations for Julie. She could neither understand them nor assimilate them, no matter how hard she tried. Like these qualities, she had long since given up on her dream of becoming an international flight attendant. Being fluent in 2 or more languages was a prerequisite, but to her infinite frustration and exasperation, she struggled to deliver linguistic flow into comprehensible sentences. The individual words were there, hovering in her mind like perfect pop-up pieces of fruit, allowing her to pass the vocabulary quizzes with flying colors. But when it came to casual conversation, the give and take required to mimic a native speaker, she simply could not get the hang of it, and eventually gave up, crying herself to sleep at night for weeks after failing the in-person fluency test. Oh, well, she said to herself, swiping her badge at the gate with a smile and a good morning to the gate attendant, and then to the pilot and co-pilot. She was going to focus on what she could do. Coincidentally, that was a lot, including being the best U.S. flight attendant she could be. With this in mind, she began readying the cabin, working alongside two other flight attendants, Carol from Dallas and James from Detroit. This was the part of the job she loved the most, before the throngs of the talkative, unpredictable, often demanding passengers arrived. She made sure everything was in place, complete and ready. The coffee brewing and stowed in its proper cubby, along with the snacks, drinks, ice, napkins, blankets, pillows, magazines, and brochures. Then she strolled down the aisle, fixing the seatbelts, windows, overhead bins, seat back pockets, underseat areas, headrests, armrests, and tray tables. A minute later, she put on her gloves and, using the antibacterial wipes, gave the cabin a swift once-over. Everything in order, she stood at the front and waited to greet the passengers. As Carol was on microphone and safety demonstration duty, and James was stationed in the back, Julie was the welcome brigade as well as the main contact with the cockpit. A while later, the plane was in the air, passengers properly snug in their seats, the paperwork signed off, the announcements made, and her hands lying casually in her lap as she waited the signal that they were above the proper altitude to trigger the move about the cabin ding and begin the beverage service. This was always the point in the flight when she took a moment to stop and think. She was strapped in beside Carol, their jump seats facing the cabin. Carol was quietly looking at her nails as Julie scanned the passengers, seeing an elderly couple talking softly to each other, three teenagers in hoodies all dozing, their heads bobbing into their pillows upon their parents' shoulders, and behind them a young couple, the wife nursing a baby in her lap with a cloth draped over her chest, the husband holding a toy in his hand and looking out the window sleepily. That was when Julie remembered the dream, the nightmare. She knew why today of all days. It always made her shudder, the thought of it causing heat to rise up her neck and constrict her throat. It was because she was meeting Paige tonight for dinner. It had been over a year since she last saw her. Julie had been out west, sometimes for a few hours on the layover, sometimes for a night or two, but she had avoided contacting her. Paige knew why. It was because nothing had changed. It had been 20 years of struggle and strife, talking with the powers that be, the FAA, the NTSB, the airlines, the senators, the unions, the safety councils, the commercial and financial leaders, the mothers' groups, the pediatrician associations, providing ideas, suggestions, collaborations, joint ventures, new inventions. Anything could potentially be a spark leading to a new solution, no matter how innocuous or small. But it was all for naught. Nothing. Nada. Zilch. Zip. Zero. And she knew why. It all boiled down to money. Then and always, no one was going to chip in a cent to make the necessary changes, and no one was going to say yes to losing money that was already in their pockets. Don't be ridiculous. Silly, naive, chaotic Julie. Why would she ever think that an industry would put human lives before the almighty dollar? So it would stay stuck indefinitely. Oh, sure, they had their rationale, saying that coming up with one solution caused unintended ramifications that were just as bad. Julie understood that, knew all about the ethical gray space, but still they couldn't come up with a compromise. That's why Julie was fighting mad, and ironically, why she knew it was finally time to give up, throw in the towel, call it a day. And why she woke up to the nightmare this morning. It wasn't just a sleeping dream, it was a waking reality. Her hands were tied behind her back, like handcuffs clenched tight around her wrists, and no amount of good intentions could free them, no matter how hard she tried, no matter how much she wanted an answer, no matter how much she worked for it, willed it, gave of herself for the cause. The weight of giving up was overwhelming and dreadful, but it was also inevitable. She had come to the end of the line, the last straw. She wondered how she would look Paige in the eye, or Marie for that matter. Not that Marie had ever truly looked at Julie, let alone really saw her, or Terry, if and when Julie ever got a hold of him, when nothing, absolutely nothing, had changed in 20 years.